The national champions Ohio State had their pro day today, and the Indianapolis Colts were on hand to watch it all. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd and I guess draft nerd as well of the site at horseshoehuddle.com. And my partner, Jake Arthur, is our boots on the ground. So today we're going to be talking all about Ohio State's pro day and also breaking down some of the prospects at that Ohio State pro day. And yes, you guys might be thinking, oh, why are they only specifically going after this one pro day? Well, our boots on the ground, Jake Arthur, was there watching this one. And also when it comes to Ohio State, they have like a million prospects that are going to be drafted. So I think they're deserving of a full episode for their players in this class. Because look, Chris Ballard has drafted quite a few Ohio State players in his time, from Tyquan Lewis to Paris Campbell, Malik Hooker. I mean, there's plenty of Ohio State guys there. So Jake, before we get into some of these offensive standouts for you today, did anything else really pop for you at this pro day?
Yeah, so whenever I go to pro days, I always first like to see what Colts representatives are there. And me and Mike Lacey follow each other around like flies this time of year. I like every pro day I go to, he is there. So the Colts Midwest Region Scout, Mike Lacey, was there. Matt Turpening was there as well, their director of college scouting. So that's a bigger name to be there. When you're looking at the big names, you're looking at like Turp, Kevin Rogers, Vasvari. Yeah. So obviously Morocco Brown and Jamie Moore as well. So when you see those guys there, or you see like coaches there, you want to usually pay attention. So yeah, I like you said, there's a million guys who are draft eligible for the Buckeyes this year. So makes a lot of sense for them to be represented.
Yeah. So we're looking at offensive standouts here. And obviously, again, this was the national champion this past year. So their quarterbacks in this draft, multiple running backs, their top receiver, obviously like half their offensive line is in here. So what stood out to you on offense today?
Yeah. So I think we know they're interested in the quarterback market at some extent in this draft. We know they've done a good bit of work on Quinn Ewers so far. So if they're looking at quarterback on like anywhere on day 3 or so, Will Howard makes a lot of sense. If you're looking at it from the perspective of just he's a backup, he's a guy with a big arm who can get rid of the ball quickly, and he's relatively mobile. So Shane Steichen could do something with that if you're looking at him from the standpoint of long-term backup, maybe. So he did really well today. His deep ball is, to me, what's most endearing about him. Like, he can fit the ball into tight windows, but he made some nice throws today. Some of his best deep balls were rolling out to his left, throwing across his body. And he put him on some dimes. Now, he will also kind of have the Carson Wentz thing where he has the big arm and the arm arrogance, but it just hangs up there on the deep ball sometimes, and the receiver has to wait for it. So his deep ball is still a little inconsistent. But he had some really nice plays today. Cleaned up with Emeka Egbuka and the short to intermediate stuff. Some of his bigger downfield throws were actually to TreVeyon Henderson. So that was another nice thing to see from Henderson, was we knew he could catch the ball, but doing it like downfield and everything and showing he's like a true 3-down weapon was really good to see. So Will Howard, definitely, I'm not in love with him like in the early to mid rounds, obviously, but if you're intending to get a quarterback, like a long-term backup option on day 3, you could do worse.
Yeah, I'd be a fan of Will Howard on day 3. I was really particularly impressed with his late season film that he put out there this past year, obviously on their run to the championship. I think he was playing his best football of his entire career. The problem is we have a lot of other years of film on him that wasn't at that level. So which level of Will Howard are you getting in the NFL? And I think that's why I would have him more as a day 3 type guy. But if you're getting him, round 5, round 6, whatever it is, I think that's a fine investment. Like, I'd prefer that investment than some of these other guys that are rumored to go in round 1 or round 2 or round 3 in this class, I would take Will Howard in round 5 for sure over those guys. But you touched on the 2 skill position players that are the big names. Obviously, I don't think these guys are going to be Colts, but you never know. The Colts could be in love with them. TreVeyon Henderson and Emeka Egbuka. What'd you see from those 2 guys today?
Yeah, so Egbuka, he didn't do like anything particularly special, but I really liked the way he moved. Seeing the way he moves in person, it's very natural and it's not rigid in the least. It's so fluid, and like as soon as he catches the ball, he's off doing his next movement. You know what I mean? There's just no wasted space in how he moves. And I know he doesn't have the elite like speed or anything like that, but I think a guy like that who knows so well how to get open and use his body for leverage, he's going to have a really high floor. So again, the Colts have Emeka Egbuka at home and Josh Downs, so I don't think that's really likely. But TreVeyon Henderson, I'm interested in this one. I'm not taking it off the table that they're going to get a running back early. Now they would have to take him in round 2. I don't know. We'll see. He may not even be there at that point.
Yeah.
But that's not going to shock me. If they take a running back in round 2 or 3, there's logic there looking to next year. Plus, I think regardless of who the quarterback is, this offense has to be really run-based. And Jonathan Taylor has missed at least 3 games. Like, he averages like 3 missed games a season. He's got 2 years left on his deal. He's making about $15 million a year. Like, you fast forward to next offseason, and there's probably going to be real questions about Taylor's future if he doesn't go out and have like another Pro Bowl year this year. So there is logic to it if they get another high caliber running back like that.
Yeah.
Moving past those guys, the offensive linemen, you know a lot about them. Obviously done a ton of work on offensive linemen in the draft guide. Josh Simmons coming off a patellar injury. He was out there working out, looked pretty good in what he did out there, did some field workouts. Donovan Jackson, I thought looked really smooth. You know, that guy, he started 2 years at left guard, and then he had this last year filling in for Simmons at left tackle as well. So this is a guy who looks really athletic, moves around really well, and has a ton of starting experience. That's all stuff I really like in a lineman.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, speaking of those 2 players in particular, in the Indy Draft Guide, which you guys can get in the link below before April here, it's a good investment there. Josh Simmons, I believe, is our 3rd ranked offensive tackle, and Donovan Jackson, we actually put it offensive tackle per my request in the draft guide. So he's actually our OT4 in that draft guide as well.
Okay.
I do think most teams have Jackson as a guard, but for me personally, I'd rather have a solid tackle than a good guard. So I put Jackson at tackle because I was really impressed with his late season work at tackle. And I thought, you could really see this guy being a good tackle. I think the Colts would put him at guard, but I do think he has a future at tackle if a team puts him there. Simmons actually was the highest graded offensive tackle on film for our draft guide, but he dropped a little bit just due to age and that injury, which takes about it's kind of like an Achilles injury. It takes an extra year of recovery before the guy really gets up to speed. So with him being so close to the top 2 tackles in the guide, he fell just below them. But Simmons and Jackson grade out very, very high in the draft guide. I think they're both top 25 players in there, top 30 players at least. So yeah, Jackson and Simmons, I think both really good. And I think Jackson would be the one the Colts would be more interested in, especially as a guard. I don't know. Again, his range is probably anywhere from like 15 to 35 in this draft class. So the Colts would maybe trade back to get him. So he could be a 1st-round option if they move back and they don't get their guys they're targeting at 14.
That's what I was going to say. I think we both know offensive line is very on the table early on, and he makes a lot of sense. I think personally, just looking at him today, I thought he looked like I thought he had a really good guard frame. Because, he's not quite as tall as you would want the ideal tackle to be, but he's got a great filled out frame. What is he, like 6'4", 6'5", 300 plus. So he's got the really good frame and athleticism for playing inside as well. I could see the Colts being really in on him. On top of, the stuff with Simmons, there's just weird off-field or football character stuff going around as well, which we don't know anything. Who knows what teams know, but I mean, that could affect his draft stock if there's any validity to it.
Yeah, I don't want to talk on that report too much because there was a potentially something said in that report from Bob McGinn that was weird for something put out in public. But Simmons, purely based off the film, very, very good. Wish he didn't suffer that injury because it does scare me a little bit. But the film is fantastic with
Patellas are
Simmons.
tough.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, guys. So coming up, we're going to talk about defense. Ohio State always has a ton of good defensive prospects as well, and this year is no different. Just imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. And getting tickets to those games shouldn't be stressful either. And that's where Gametime comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Let's start with their Gametime picks. They got the curation that makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever. I've used Gametime to get tickets to pretty much all of those things, and it's legit. Recommend it to a friend. The first time they do it, they get a discount on it as well. So it's always good. I just recently checked out the Gametime app for some amazing deals coming up on huge matchups with the tournament. Obviously, it's coming to Indy. The lowest price guarantee means Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a better price for a similar ticket somewhere else. Plus, they just bring you general peace of mind. They got the seat views before you buy, so there's no surprise fees either. And they've got that lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so I don't know what degrees the Colts are going to go to build this defense, but I hope they never stop. Because can you just imagine this? You give Lou Anarumo all this ammo to actually see what he can do with like quality players at all levels. And again, Ohio State has got good players this year at all levels. One of my favorite defensive players for them right now is safety Lathan Ransom. So this is a guy who more of a strong safety type. He's a thumper, will fly downhill. I thought he ran really well today. Didn't do the positional work. So that was, I don't want to say disappointing because he's already kind of checked off that box during the pre-draft process. But no, this is a good player. The Colts shouldn't be done adding safeties yet either because, they've got their two starters, but they've got nothing else below that. And if they have three decent safeties, I think Lou Anarumo would be enticed to use all three. So a guy like Ransom, I think fits.
Yeah, I think Ransom's a guy in this draft class for me that's been getting overlooked really weirdly for whatever reason. Like, I'm not sure why I'm seeing him like outside the top 100 for a lot of people and a lot of big boards and slipping to like day 3 or mid day 3 on some of these where like even that it's just base value here, like not even going too scouty here with this. You're getting a big physical athletic safety that started at Ohio State this past season. I'm not sure what there's not to like in this film. Like, I know box safeties get pushed down value-wise because it's all about getting that free safety in here. So I understand him being like outside the top 50 or outside the top 60 even. But I think when you get into like that 70 to 100 range in this draft, a player like Ransom makes a ton of sense, especially for a team like the Colts, where when you get into round 3 and maybe they've settled some of their needs in the first 2 rounds, then you're just looking for good athletes that fit your defense. A player like Ransom, who can run the alley, who can be physical, who, again, like I'm not saying he's a full-time free safety, but he can rotate back there at times and do some things. I think that's a really good third safety to have in the system, and then he can be a plus special teamer from day one. And also, like, he's got the rule of cool, man. Lathan Ransom.
That's a safety. Sick name.
That's a sick name. I know it doesn't always work out where the cool safety names work, but like, that almost feels like too good to fail right there. Lathan Ransom at safety. Like, come on.
I'm sure it's been said, but he's holding receivers for Ransom.
Yeah, like, come on.
It's very on the nose. That's very good.
Like that's definite success right there. So yeah, if the Colts took a player like Ransom in like round 3, round 4, like I think it makes your defense so much better. And I think they need a third safety. desperately in this draft class. So yeah, I'd be a big fan of Ransom. I think that's my favorite Ohio State defender for the Colts in this draft.
Yeah. Plus, he's a guy who, in the modern NFL, when it's harder and harder for guys to hit and be physical, I mean, he's in college, but they've got rules against that as well. And he seems to do it in a manner that's legal, and like they get away with it. So if you can add physicality, that's not going to cost you 15 yards and getting ejected from the game, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So we know the Colts need some depth on the defensive line as well. They've got several players, but a couple that have caught my eye are JT Tuimoloau. He is a pretty well-rounded defensive end. Can set an edge, is a very physical pass rusher, doesn't really get pushed around a whole lot. He's not going to be your super like athletic, bendy, explosive edge rusher, but he's just a good, solid player that's going to be productive, get into the backfield. You know, the effort type of guy that, you know, once the whistle blows, he's probably going to be there around the ball, is going to get some of those second effort sacks. So that's another guy I really like. Ty Hamilton as well. Get you a little run stuffer. He's pretty twitchy though too. Big dude, but very twitchy, very mobile. He's got a great build. He's just like jacked up, but he moves so well for a guy that's that big. The Colts, you know, they still need some help at defensive tackle. I mean, they got Gallimore and Adebawore, but by no means should that keep them from adding more on the interior.
Yeah, and if anyone like wants to question like how Ohio State won the championship last year, I'm not saying anybody is, but look at all these trench players that are being drafted in this class, and not even just getting drafted in general, but just going in like that top 100 range. I mean, JT, you mentioned there, Ty Hamilton is a fringe top 100 player. And then you have other guys like Tyleik Williams, that defensive tackle, and Jack Sawyer is probably going to go top 50, top 60. Like, this is multiple top 100 picks on one defensive line, and not even just to mention those skill players that we talked about as well. So I think any of these guys make a lot of sense for the Colts. Tyleik Williams as well. Like, I think, you know, he would have to be like their second round pick, and that might be a little bit too early for a defensive tackle for the Colts, but he's been getting a lot of love this cycle. I think Ty Hamilton makes a ton of sense though, a little bit later than like a Tyleik Williams, because again, like, he's twitchy and he's got more upside. Williams had more production this past year, but Hamilton's a good player. And just getting that pedigree, getting that size and athleticism in here to work as like a backup defensive tackle, I think would be a really good fit with this Colts team.
Yeah, Williams, for what it's worth, he did get hurt running the 40 today. He fell right at the end of it and grabbed at his left knee, upper knee area. He was walking around, luckily, after that with like an ice wrap around what looked like his quad. So looks like, hopefully, you know, knock on wood, fingers crossed, he avoided anything serious. But certainly, you know, he didn't get to participate fully. The 40 was very early in the day. So disappointing for him, but hopefully he avoided anything serious. But yeah, that's a good player. I know when I reported it and tweeted it live that he got hurt, I got 1 million people showing concern for that. So obviously a very popular player. But yeah, guys, coming up, there's even more players that we have to talk about that we haven't even really mentioned yet, or they didn't participate at the pro day today, but the Buckeyes are loaded. All right, maybe the most highly regarded player that we haven't really talked about yet was Quinshon Judkins. He didn't really do anything today. I think maybe he did the bench press, but he didn't do like any of the field stuff. So he and Henderson, for a lot of people, are ranked like right next to each other. I know a lot of people are flip-flopping back and forth trying to figure out how they want to rank them. But, you know, Judkins is really not far off from me. I have Henderson above him still, but a very like physical, chaotic runner who can do a little bit of everything as well. He's the type of guy you can give the ball throughout the game and kind of a full head of steam type of runner to me. But yeah, physical guy who, you know, he's probably not an elite running back, but very well could carry a run game, I think.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, throughout this whole process, I've been thinking like, okay, Judkins in like round 3. I know I'm putting a lot of guys to the Colts in round 3, by the way. They only have 1/3 round pick as of right now, so we'll see if they add more.
They have to trade their entirety of day 3 to get like 2 or 3 more day 3.
Well, I was thinking they just keep moving back in round 1, and then eventually you just only have round 3 picks, and then we'll be good. But Judkins is a guy in like that round 3 range that I've been talking about all draft season. Like, yeah, Henderson might go like too high, like late round 1, early round 2. But if you can get a guy like Judkins in round 3, that's an awesome consolation prize. Like a hard runner, good pass protector, does a lot of good things. Just maybe not like elite in any area, but just solid. Like everything he does is so solid. But I even saw somebody speculating today on social media about, the Steelers might really be in love with Quinshon Judkins. They had Mike Tomlin there today. And somebody said, watch out for him at 27. And I'm like, well, okay, there goes the Judkins dream there. But yeah, either of these Ohio State running backs, I think, are fantastic prospects. I mean, Henderson, you get a little bit more of the athletic upside. Judkins, again, you just get a player who's solid in every single department into your team. So pick your poison with that. Judkins probably better backup running back. Henderson better long-term starter. So again, I think either of those guys would be good. But Judkins certainly is someone who I've been a big fan of. But I think pretty much anyone who's covered the draft this year can say the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll throw out a few more names here. Tell me who you like. Jack Sawyer, you briefly mentioned him. Yeah, another defensive end for them. Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock, a couple of corners for them. Seth McLaughlin, offensive lineman. So they got a few more dudes out there.
Yeah, Seth McLaughlin, I believe, fell just outside the top 10 for interior offensive linemen in the draft guide. Really, really solid in pretty much every department. Spent a couple years starting at Alabama before transferring to Ohio State. So he's got a lot of pedigree and a lot of tough competition in his career. Obviously, going from the SEC to a national champion winning team. It's unfortunate, though, because I believe he tore his ACL late this season. And that's why he probably wasn't working out today. That's why you didn't get to see much of him. Did he do anything? Was he even out there?
Let's see. No.
No.
Now that I look at my list, no. So they handed out this list of everyone who participated, and the X's are what they were not going to do.
Okay.
And you see McLaughlin's is full of X's.
Yeah, torn ACL will do that to you. It's hard to work out with the torn ACL. Maybe he could have done like the bench or something.
Soft.
But yes, that's the adrenaline's not kicking in months later. They should have got him the second it tore. They should have got him working out. But yeah, Seth McLaughlin, I think, has a long career as just a steady like backup player in the NFL. So I think, the Colts are looking for Danny Pinter and Wesley French competition. I think he could be that. I don't know how much you're really looking for that in this draft.
I really would advise them to look more for like starter competition rather than
right.
center for competition.
Look, Ohio State doesn't have everyone is going to be a top 100 pick in this draft, but McLaughlin I think is a perfectly solid player. Denzel Burke kind of intrigues me a little bit as well. I believe, and Ohio State fans can correct me in the comments, I'm sure they will. I believe he was the guy who had a lot of like DPI concerns last year, a lot of pass interference concerns. And for some reason, man, with corners, I always tend to like the corners who have too many DPIs and are too physical.
Yeah.
And like for me, I'm like, I can just teach him to calm down a little bit. It's kind of like falling for like the gunslinger quarterback, being like, I'll tame the gunslinger. Yeah, I can fix it. He can be a little more conservative with me. Like he's got the aggressive mindset I want. I just got to calm him down. I'm kind of like that with corners too, where it's like at least he's willing to get his hands on receivers and be physical. So Denzel Burke, again, I don't know how high I take a guy with his concerns, but I like a corner who can be physical, even if it leads to some penalties in college. Because I'm always like, I can calm him down. Don't worry. Don't worry. I can make you more, technically sound. Just show me the willingness to hit receivers and put your hands on them and adjust them. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. Again, he's physical. He's got decent speed. He is grabby. Now that you mention that, I remember I was reading up on these guys coming into the pro day, and Lance Zierlein wrote up that like he wishes he would go more for the ball than the receiver.
Yes,
which is very good description of it. But no, he's got starting experience, versatility, so he's got a lot to like. And we've seen the Colts keep trying on day 3 for these corners, and it largely hasn't worked out. Darius Rush gone. Jalen Jones made it, but Rush gone, Micah Abraham, Jalen Simpson, those three guys didn't really
What was
stick.
the thing that Jalen Jones had that led to success was that early starting experience at a major program for multiple years. Again, I'm not going to compare him directly to Jalen Jones because Jalen Jones is an outlier for a lot of reasons, but sometimes just using picks on guys who have experience at high leverage situations and high leverage like teams means a lot to the transition to the NFL, because it's not like a big jump in competition for a guy like Denzel Burke. Like, he's going to the NFL. Obviously, there's better players there, but he was seeing Marvin Harrison Jr. in practice. He was seeing Egbuka in practice. He was seeing, I mean, heck, if he's been there long enough, he was seeing all these other Ohio State receivers that are fantastic players in the NFL. Like, he's kind of battle tested, you know? So if you're getting on day 3 and you're like, we need to take a shot on a guy who can make a roster, like, why not on a guy like Denzel Burke, who's kind of seen it all already?
Yeah. So we talk about all these Buckeyes to mention that Kyle McCord is the former Buckeyes quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Really needs to come to town.
Yeah, Kyle McCord. I actually don't mind Kyle McCord as a quarterback prospect, but again, like more like day 3, like a Will Howard, where I think Will Howard should go, like round 5, 6, 7, and then I think you can be, pretty comfortable with that there. But Jake, before we get out of here, though, over under, I guess. How many of these players are Colts guys? I put over under a 0.5. Are you going over?
I'm gonna say they get at least one.
Okay.
And I was going to ask you kind of the same of like, who do you think is the most likely to get picked by it? I have a feeling it's one of those round 2 to 6 guys, probably.
Yeah.
I know that covers like the entire draft, but basically not the like loaded first round guys is what I'm saying.
I didn't even think about it when you said round 2 to 6. I was like, oh yeah, round 2 to 6. Yeah, somewhere in the round 1 to 7 range, I think they could
anywhere around there.
Yeah. I think Lathan Ransom is probably the guy that I'm thinking, because I think when they're going for like this third safety, this upgrade over Rodney Thomas, who can also play a little bit, I think they're going to go for more of a guy who can run the alley, be a consistent tackler, who's a hard hitter, and can be a plus special teamer. Because one underrated aspect of this offseason for the Colts is they're not only replacing, well, they haven't done it yet because he's still on the roster, but assuming that they're going to replace Rodney Thomas as the third safety, they also need to replace Trevor Denbo as the special teams safety, because Denbo is currently not on the roster. He's rehabbing a really gruesome injury. So a player like Ransom can kind of fill both of those roles and get some time on defense. So to me, a player like Ransom makes a lot of sense. I do really like Donovan Jackson as a guard for the Colts, but I don't know if that's going to be in the cards because he's going to go so high. And then after that, maybe Denzel Burke or Tyreek Williams. Man, it depends on how serious that injury is.
You take Williams because I was going to take Hamilton.
Yeah.
If Hamilton's there in the 3rd, I mean, maybe they like him in the 2nd, maybe. But Ransom definitely feels like the one I'm most willing to say the Colts would really want. But yeah, Hamilton. I like Cody Simon too, but they probably could, especially as a special teamer.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Simon, Ransom, Ty Hamilton.
I will say, to peek behind the curtain a little bit, I'm not saying I'm too tuned in with the Colts or anything, but I feel pretty good at a lot of positions on what the Colts are looking at and who I think they like. With defensive tackle this year, I just have no clue. Because I think with defensive tackle, I have so much of what I want them to go after. I want a 330-pound dude who can just fill gaps and eat up in the run game. But traditionally, they haven't really drafted that. Maybe Grover Stewart, when they drafted him, was kind of like that, but not really. And they always wanted him to cut some weight. Now they're going to a system that's more two-gapping, where you need more bigger bodies. But again, the guys they have on the roster are Grover, DeForest Buckner, Adetomi, and the guy Gallimore, who are all 300 pounds, the gap shooting types. So I'm really torn on what they do at defensive tackle, because I have a path I want them to take, but they've never really taken that path before, and I just don't know if they are in this draft, So I would love for them to go after a big boy defensive tackle, but I don't know. I don't even know if they see defensive tackle as a major need. I feel good at every other position. Defensive tackle, I'm struggling to wrap my head around in this draft class.
Well, they tried it with Eric Johnson. They tried to replicate that Grover Stewart of it all, and then they just haven't done it. Everyone else has been kind of a 3-tech, but maybe. I mean, maybe they try that again this year. Go back to the well.
Yeah. So you guys let us know in the comment section what you think. Do you want some Ohio State players, or are a lot of you guys Indiana fans and you're still bitter that Ohio State won the championship?
Well, let me do you one better, because you could probably see him in a hotel room right now, because tomorrow I'll be at Notre Dame, who just lost to Ohio State
There we go.
in the national championship. So follow along there. I'll be at Notre Dame's pro day, and we'll have the same conversation about Notre Dame's roster.
Yeah, we'll have Jake will be on here, and he'll be talking all about how Riley Leonard is the quarterback of the future for the Colts.
It's gonna be 3 segments of Jack Kaiser, and you know it.
Yes, I will do a whole segment on Jack Kaiser for sure. He might be my age, but he can cover. That's all I care about. He can cover.
Right.
But you guys tune in tomorrow. You guys obviously follow our Boots on the Ground, Jake Arthur, on social medias as he's talking about those events and being our boots on the ground. Everything that we pay him for, he is there doing it there for Horseshoe Huddle. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every single day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get first dibs on Q&A episodes and other mock draft fun stuff, follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube where we listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening.